Well, thanks for stopping by the Murphology Podcast. This is Kathy Murphy, a.k.a. Murph, and we are here to talk to you about bicycle touring for beginners. My guest today is none other than Will Sharpe. Hey, Will.
Hello.
And I have had the pleasure of being on many bicycle rides with Will here in the Cedar Rapids area. And actually, we've gone outside the state, right? Have you been up to Root River when we go?
Yeah, most recently, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we've done the High Trestle ride, and of course, Ragbri, which anybody in the world should know what Ragbri is. And if they don't, they should Google it right now.
Right.
Well, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So, first question, how did you get into bicycle touring?
Right. So I started really getting back into cycling since I was a kid when about 7 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And, touring seemed to be kind of a natural progression from where I started. So I started with a road bike when I did my first Ragbri back in 2012. And then I just kept wanting to carry more and more things.
Yeah.
Especially some tasty drinks, for those necessary safety stops.
Nice.
So we got to stay safe.
Yeah.
And the idea of being self-contained and having everything I need on my bike without requiring support was definitely appealing.
Yeah.
And I was kind of abusing my bike to the extent that, things were breaking, especially spokes. But also I was mounting things on it that, wasn't designed for.
Right.
And so I was kind of like inventing ways to do it.
Right.
And so after I abused my road bike long enough, I actually started looking at a bike that could actually do the job.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I began, and I always enjoyed cycling and wanted to do some overnights, being self-contained, and so that's kind of where I started.
Yeah. And self-contained, for people who maybe don't understand what that means, it literally means everything that you need is on your bike, whether it is camp gear, clothing, like you said, tasty beverages, whatever it might be. And I do need to point out that I started the exact same way as you. I had my fancy carbon 10 or whatever it was, road bike that I got a rack put on it that the bike shop told me I shouldn't put a rack on it. And then, got some cool bags and then put too much stuff in the bags. And
sure.
I didn't have any spokes break, but the rack went into the tire.
Oh,
and so then I'd have flat tires all the time and not really understand that maybe I didn't have the right bike.
Right.
So, yeah. So with that said, what kind of bike do you ride when you're touring?
So I currently have my current bike, and I've gone through a couple, but my current bike is a custom-built Salsa Marrakesh, courtesy of World of Bikes.
Nice.
In Iowa City, Iowa. It's an awesome bike. I love it. I spent a lot of time with them figuring out, the custom components that I was really interested in, and they kind of filled in all the gaps for me. And a lot of things I learned, from my previous bikes that helped me make the decisions that I made into getting this new one, the latest.
And I'm going to assume, but I should probably ask, is that a steel frame?
It is a steel frame,
yes. I think most touring bikes are steel frame, I think.
I think a lot of them are. I think it depends on your comfort, and so the steel frames tend to absorb more.
Right.
So it gives you a little bit of a softer ride. Aluminum is going to be real rough.
Right.
And or it's going to be more jarring.
Right. I just always, my touring bike is a Gunner, and it's also custom. So, similar to you, I kind of looked at what I did wrong in previous bikes and got it right this time. But it's steel frame, and I don't think I could do anything different at this point.
Sure.
I love it. So, okay, so you've got your dream bike, at least for right now. I can tell you, based on your stories, Facebook, hanging out with you, that you have been on some epic tours.
Yeah.
Like, would you be willing to share a few?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been on some good tours. I'm not a ton, and I keep doing them year after year, and try to do more and more. But I got a couple I could share with you. So I think the first one comes to mind is a couple of years back. I joined a couple guys that were doing a ride around Lake Michigan.
Ooh.
So they were doing it's like a 650-mile ride around it over a couple of weeks. So I joined them on the first leg, We went from Green Bay to just south of Mackinac Island.
Oh, okay.
So it was about 300 miles for me over about 6 days. And that was a really fun, beautiful ride. The roads were really good. As you were going up the western coast there of Lake Michigan, not too much of a shoulder, but once you got up into the upper peninsula of Michigan, shoulders were amazing, because they got so much snow up there.
Yeah.
Huge, wide shoulders, and you feel real comfortable even though you're on a highway. But yeah, so the beautiful campgrounds, beautiful scenery. We'd stop at these campgrounds and tend to load up our bikes with a bunch of we'd go out and grab some firewood. Okay. And we like to have a nice big fires. I was traveling with some firefighters, and so they ironically like to have some big fires. Right. Just happy to comply.
So wait, did you have all the firewood on your bikes?
Yeah. So sometimes we'd go to a campground and, we might have to go to a shop a couple miles away or something and bring it back. And so we would strap down these big bundles of firewood, come back. And another funny story about that. So we were kind of excited between the three of us to see some bears, but we didn't really expect to see any.
Right.
And we didn't ultimately, but when we first left Green Bay, we needed to stop at a post office, and as one of the guys with us was dropping off a package, and there was a woman there that was interested in what we were doing. And so we told her, and she was like really worried, and she told us about, there's all these bear sightings up the coast, or whatever, and so we were kind of freaked out about it, but ultimately we never really saw anything about it or any bears at all. So.
Right. Which I mean, it's a good story. But it'd be an interesting story had you seen the bear. Right. Unless, of course, the bear was coming at you, then this would not be a very good story. Right. Yeah. So good.
We provided some good laughs.
Yeah. So that sounds like quite a tour. I mean, 6 days over 300 miles. That's pretty good. Right.
Yeah. I think it was. We kind of loaded up the miles at the beginning. Yeah. And actually, that's kind of another funny story because our goal was to get to Mackinac Island kind of that last day and make it short. So it was like just under 30 miles. But when we got to Mackinac Island, we were going to try and go to a kind of a bar in the middle of the island but to get there, it's kind of real steep. So the perimeter trail that goes around Mackinac Island is flat, but to actually get up into the middle, you got to climb quite a bit. And so we weren't sure exactly the best place to climb, and so we ended up taking this kind of, it's not really a death tour, but we went. It was a lot of miles, right? And so by the end of the day, by the time we took the ferry back to the mainland there and got to our campground, it was probably one of our longest days.
Oh my gosh.
And so we were all a little irritable in the end. But,
and I was just going to ask you, if it's an island, how did you get there? But you said you took a ferry?
Yeah.
And they'll let you take your bike and all your gear right on it?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, they sure will. So.
Nice.
And I did, I ultimately had some wheel issues there. Broke some spokes, but so that was a little disappointing, but we'll maybe talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that later.
So another trip that we went on was, I think this is probably my most fun so far, had the best time, was we did the Gap and CNO, and that's the Great Allegheny Passage and the Chesapeake and Ohio towpath. So it's the towpath that borders the Potomac, where they used to.
So we're talking east side of the country?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we started in Pittsburgh, and then went all the way to Washington D.C.
Oh,
so you start on the Gap, which is about 150 miles. It's crushed limestone, real nice, wide, well-maintained trail. And then once you get to Cumberland, Maryland, you pick up on the CNO towpath. And the towpath is not as well maintained.
Oh, no.
And so it's kind of like these two gravel paths. It's full of roots and mud and rocks. Yeah. And still an amazing time. And so there's about 185 miles on that, roughly, but it just incredible sights. Mm-hmm. While you're on the Gap, you're bordering a couple different rivers, just beautiful scenery. It's really actually friendly to cyclists along the way, especially, tours, because there are, the towns cater to cyclists a lot. There's actually, free kind of little huts and stuff where you can actually camp out for free in some places. Okay. There's little hostels that are catered to cyclists along the way.
So they're welcoming. They want
Yes.
people to come, and they want tourists, and that sounds awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. So it was just a beautiful ride. There's so much history on that.
Yeah.
On that trip as well. So
Yeah.
like if you get a chance to do it, there's so many towns you can stop at, so many places you can see. It's incredible.
I remember seeing photographs. Well, and we probably should say, well, not that maybe people don't care, but I think it's interesting. When you did that adventure, it was you and 3 other guys, right?
Yeah.
So you guys all like said goodbye to your wives. The ones that had kids said, all right, Daddy's going to go on a little trip.
Right.
And the photographs were just amazing. You guys looked like you were having a blast from dusk till dawn.
Oh, yeah.
And probably all day long as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. That group of guys, we do an annual tour every year. We pick a different one, and just a really great dynamic between all of us. We each kind of have our roles. And we have a real good time. We're pretty silly most of the time, but
well, and nothing surprises me with you guys, but it may surprise listeners that there were lots of days that you wore kilts on your bicycles.
Absolutely.
So there are a couple pictures I saw. You guys are in like dry fit or jerseys and kilts. So do you want to give a little background on that?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So all of us do wear kilts, and that kind of comes from our RAGBRAI team.
Yeah.
We all ride with the same RAGBRAI team, and that's the Subtle Savages.
Shout out to the Savages.
Yeah, absolutely. So wearing kilts is kind of their thing. A lot of teams now wear it.
Yeah.
But they've been wearing kilts for a long time. So anytime we do any of these tours, we generally wear a kilt the whole time.
Yeah.
And so, we bike hundreds of miles in our kilts.
In kilts.
And it's pretty fun because people ask a lot, why are you wearing a kilt? And it's not because we're Scottish or anything like that. It's just because it's a team thing. And honestly, it's a really good conversation starter.
Yeah.
And so you meet some really fun people, and they're excited to see you. So it opens some doors too.
And you guys just look good because you're all, us girls would be like, oh, they're so matchy.
Right.
They look really cute. And we should probably give a shout out to Sport Kilt because they are the provider. That's who we buy. I have kilts as well, but we buy them through Sport Kilt. So they're meant to be worn for active people. So you can jump on your bike and not feel like you're wearing a skirt because you're not.
Yep.
It is a kilt. So if I can find some photographs of you 4, because there were some awesome photos with some great backgrounds. I'll throw them up on our website here.
Absolutely, you should.
So, so you would recommend the Gap and the CNO Trail for sure.
Yes.
And you would recommend Lake Michigan. Yes. Okay, awesome. So you did briefly mention mechanical issues. You've had some spoke. I've been with you. So RAGBRAI is a big deal for most Iowans, at least in our circle of cyclists. And the last, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, there's a smaller group of us that leaves from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, loads up our bikes, and we ride our bikes to the start of RAGBRAI. So we call that the bag out. And it's sometimes it's almost as fun as RAGBRAI itself because you're going through communities that, maybe haven't seen that style of cycling before. And of course we do our fair share of drinking and eating, and we use parks and camp, and it's a blast. But I can tell you the last couple years that I've been on the bag out with you, it's such a bummer. Like you've had mechanical issues, and I guess last year one of our teammates, Cassie, had the same mechanical issues. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Absolutely. So the main mechanical issues that I tended to have were around the spokes on my rear wheel especially. So I'm a big guy and my bike is heavy. I carry a lot of stuff. I like to carry a lot of stuff. And so that's difficult for the bikes that I was riding to handle. And so I've learned a lot since then, and my latest bike, no more spoke issues.
Yay!
Granted, I've now progressed into a couple other issues, but talk about those more. But so as far as learning how to do those things, I grew up. My dad was an engineer. We come from a big family, and so we had a lot of cars. So my background is really in kind of car repair.
Okay.
And so there's actually quite a few things on a bicycle that are still kind of a mystery to me.
Sure.
But as things break, I kind of forced myself to at least learn a bit about it.
Yeah.
And the spokes was one of the first things I learned. And so I started basically trying to repair it and finding out, oh, I don't have the right tools.
Right.
And so I did it. And ultimately, or actually, I can't completely fix a wheel. So my approach when I break some spokes, if I do, is just to basically fix it well enough that I can get to the
bike shop,
next to the bike shop, or just get where I'm going.
Yeah.
So I can't really true up a wheel at this point, but that's kind of on my list of things to learn.
Sure.
And other than that, it's just kind of like I have some mechanical ability, and so it's just some problem solving or just understanding like how it might work.
And I will tell you, because of you, Will Sharpe, I have 2 spokes that are taped to my rack.
Right.
So they're kind of an emergency. I would have to probably watch a YouTube video to figure out what to do, because right this second, there's no way that I could fix the spoke. But because of you, I at least have them on my bike, so the hope is that someone within my group will be able to help me, or I'll be able to figure it out on my own. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a good touring tip, that if you're on this sort of bike and you're carrying a lot of weight, that's something to consider, that, if a spoke breaks, you might be able to keep going forward, but for the most part, you have to change it in order to keep rolling.
Right. There are some techniques that you can use to run without a spoke. It has to do with tightening, kind of ones that are opposite. I am not an expert yet on that.
Yeah.
There is in theory, so I would probably look at YouTube to help me out with that kind of thing. But YouTube is an excellent resource, assuming you have some service.
Right. Yeah. Assuming you have service. That's a big one there. Yeah. Well, speaking of your bike, give us like a few important features that you find like, I'm so glad this is on my bike.
Right. Yeah. Well, so I'm going to actually start with probably the construction. So as we've been talking about, I've had a lot of wheel issues. So one of the most critical components that I had in my latest custom build is the wheels itself.
Okay.
I contacted a rim manufacturer, told them my setup, and asked them, the experts, what do I need?
Yeah.
And so that's what I then relayed to World of Bikes, who ultimately, constructed it. And so they're super heavy duty wheels, meant to, they're basically tandem bike tires. So tandems are meant to carry multiple people, but it's just me and my bags.
Right.
And then they're real big, wide tires. Now, not everybody that does touring necessarily needs that.
Sure.
Kind of based on your setup and how much you want to carry.
Right.
But that's really important to me. I am a big fan of disc brakes, specifically hydraulic brakes. So I have a fat bike, really like the stopping power of those disc brakes, and specifically full hydraulic ones. Not necessarily required for everyone, but it's just what I like.
And the heavier your bike is, the more you need that stopping power.
Sure, yeah. Fenders, obviously, really important for rain, just to keep sort of clean.
And the guy behind you, when you're biking in the rain, if you don't have the fenders, they're getting wet.
Right, no doubt. I always hate the people too that have really short fenders, and so
splashes
it's like, protect themselves, but it's horrible for you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's very true.
Right, and then I would say like lots of mounts for things that I might want to put on my bike.
Yep. Your speaker, your water bottles, your bags, and so that gets me to the next question. Give us an idea of some of the things on your bike. Like, there's obvious things when I think of a bagger or somebody who's self-contained.
Right.
Give us a few ideas of what's on your bike.
Yeah, so the major thing is the bags themselves.
Yeah.
So, and the bags for me were a bit of progression too. I learned as I went. And so the bags that I have now are kind of really just the first set of premium bags that I ever bought. I kind of started with some cheap ones that I found, the cheapest ones I could find at the bike shop, right? And then I've kind of graduated, and I'm ready for another set now. But what I currently run are 4 bags. They're classic touring Arkels, and I've got smaller bags that are like 28 liter up front, and then 42 liter ones, and that they're bigger. They have a couple outside pockets, which are kind of handy.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of important maybe for people organizational wise.
Yes.
To help. And
that's a huge issue. We talked about that on the last podcast that I did with Dana, that you get into a rhythm as you do a tour, but those first couple days, even couple hours, you're like, okay, you have to end up opening all your compartments and all your bags to figure out, where are my sunglasses? Where's my sunscreen?
Yep.
And then after a couple days, you're like well oiled. As long as you put stuff back where you found it, then you can be like, my tent's in this bag, my clothes are in this
Right.
bag. And so, yeah, it's...
Except when you get to the obscure item that you didn't need until that day.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it all comes out.
Right, you need to tighten something, so you need your toolkit, and it's on the bottom, and yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And the other thing I think I'd mention about the bags is just whether or not to. So I opted to go non-waterproof and and get ones, just get covers.
Okay, yeah.
That came with it. That was my first choice.
Yeah.
But a lot of people go with waterproof.
Sure.
And I may reevaluate that decision
Yep.
as I move forward.
I have both. I have the bags that are fabric, and then they come with rain covers, and you can pretty much, if it starts a downpour on you, you still have a minute or two to get those bags out or get the covers out and put them on. So
Right.
It's no big deal. I currently am running bags that are waterproof, and it's nice to not have to think about it.
Yeah. I
But
agree.
there's nothing. It's like my pet peeve in bike touring life is when everything gets wet. It's just like it's kind of a day ruiner for me.
Yeah.
When your clothes are wet, or sometimes you can't help if your tent gets wet because you got to pack it up and
Yeah, exactly.
let it dry out at night. But man, when it starts raining, you're just like crossing your fingers that I hope those bags are sealed up.
Right.
So,
And then some, So some other things. I use my seat, I guess, is the next, kind of important thing just
Yeah.
from a comfort
Oh,
standpoint.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I have a Brooks Cambium
yep.
C17.
Yep.
And so that's like that rubber one.
And in theory, you don't have to break it in. Is that true?
Exactly, yeah. So the other Brooks are like leather and
Yeah.
you cover them up in the rain. I wasn't really
Yeah.
interested in that. I'm
Yeah.
kind of lazy. So I was just looking for simple, and it's the first Brooks that I owned, and so I don't know any different.
Sure.
It might be that other Brooks seats are better, but
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So shout out to Brooks.
Right.
Saddles.
Mm-hmm.
I have an Ergon
Okay.
women's specific saddle, and it's kind of the same deal where it's that material kind of rubbery so that it can get wet.
Sure.
But man, it's super, super comfortable.
Yeah.
No, didn't have to work it in. So I've definitely heard people that have their Brooks saddles and they absolutely love them.
Right.
But then they'll also in the same sentence say, yeah, it took me several years to get it worn in. I'm like, how could you bike
Right.
for several years uncomfortable?
Yeah.
No, that's terrible.
I
So,
agree.
okay, some other fun things that you've done when I've been on touring with you. Well, first of all, are you a camper, a hammocker, a lay on a picnic table? What kind of sleeper are you?
I'm a camper, actually.
Yeah.
So I prefer a tent. I haven't really got into the hammock scenario. I've had some lower back problems, so I'm a little worried about the hammock
Sure.
situation. I know it's lighter, so to me it sounds appealing.
Yeah.
But I also just like to be covered.
Yes.
So I go with a 2-person tent.
Yep.
That's, relatively light. I keep my eye out for a better one, but it works for now.
Yep.
And I just 2-person because it's not that there's somebody else in there or anything. It's just the fact that I have big bags.
Yeah, you can bring your bags in.
Yeah, exactly. So you need more space than you think.
Right.
So people go with a 1-person tent. You're going to be real cramped in there.
Right. What kinds of things do you pack for camping that maybe people wouldn't think about?
Well, I carry I don't know if this is necessarily what people wouldn't think about, but I mean, I carry a sleeping pad. I prefer an inflatable one.
Yep, I do too.
So I found a good one that's doesn't really require anything else like a pump.
Mhm.
It's just just like 20 breaths.
Yeah, I was going to say.
essentially,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And I carry inflatable pillows.
Mhm.
Same thing. So they pack really tight.
Yes, and light.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a really light sleeping bag is important too.
Yes.
So
So you and I have been part of a group where we've camped in parks, and sometimes have a restroom, sometimes don't. But you saved all of us. I think that was 2 years ago. Because it was super hot. We were all sweaty and dirty, and we get to our campsite, and there's pretty much nothing there. So
Right.
tell the listeners how you saved us.
yeah, so I love to carry my own personal shower, which is really just a small segment of hose
Yeah.
and a garden sprayer attachment.
Yeah.
And so I also carry a tool that allows you to turn on a faucet that might be in a park that doesn't have a
Ooh.
handle. So
Okay.
it's questionable there, but I like a shower. I want to get clean at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So fortunately, most times I've never had to use that. So
Yeah.
you find a faucet, hook up that hose,
Yeah.
and there you go. You got a shower.
And it was life-changing because, first of all, it was super, super cold. So, you know, that first, spray, you can hardly catch your breath. But then, you know, you get used to it. You're sunburned. You're hot anyway. And, oh, my gosh, that was like just going to bed clean is a great feeling. And those of you who are into bike touring, you understand that, you know, you're not in luxury. You don't always get 2 showers a day or I don't know, even 1 sometimes. But yeah, so thanks for bringing your kick-ass shower hose.
Yeah, no problem.
So if somebody asks you, why do you carry so much stuff on your bike? What would you say?
I would say that it's really fun.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, like, just to be able to have anything and everything you need.
It just feels right.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. And I love it when people ask you if you have something and then you do, like, I don't know, Pringles or
right. And then that's the other thing I was thinking of. So I like to help people, you know, that's kind of my thing. Yeah. So if I've got something on my bike that helps you, it makes the experience that much better.
Yeah. Like a shower.
Right. Exactly. Like the shower or all the tools that I carry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, name a couple of items that you always carry during a ride.
Okay. So I always carry, like, a charging brick is really important to me.
Oh, yes.
Because even though I've got a dyno hub that, you know, like powers my lights and my front light and rear light, there's so many things that you got to charge now. That's just that's probably a critical item.
Is yours a solar charge?
It is not.
Okay. So at some point during the day, you make sure it's fully charged, like if you're at a restaurant or a bar.
Yep.
And then at night, you have enough juice in there to kind of get your lights and stuff.
Right. Actually, I mean, I kind of go overboard, so I actually carry 2 20,000 milliamp hour packs. So that'll last me generally 3 to 4 days minimum.
Nice.
And that's using it full time. So the other thing the other reason I carry that is because I like to have a phone mount with my phone mounted on the bike the whole time with Google Maps up.
So you can see. Yeah.
And Google Maps while you're touring is fantastic because you can, as you're going, if you're running it the whole time, now granted it uses a lot of battery power, but you can see the things that you're coming up on, like bars or cool things to see.
Gas stations. We're here in Iowa. We're huge fans of Casey's. Whenever you see a Casey's, we have to stop no matter what because they have everything. They have great restrooms. They have beer. They have Gatorade. They have food, pizza, ice cream.
Absolutely.
Everything. And if you need like sunscreen or Band-Aids, or they even have clothes. I think you can get yourself a fun hat or a T-shirt.
Right. Yeah, we bought some. I think we bought some little pigs that squeeze.
Yeah, the squeak.
And squeaks. Yeah, those were awesome.
Awesome. All right. So, Will, you've been bike touring for a while, and you've definitely gotten out and seen a lot of the United States. But what advice would you give first timers?
Yeah. So I would say one of the first things I suggest is go out and try just an overnight.
Oh, yeah.
You know, don't go overboard. Experiment with, what you want to pack. I would suggest, not going overboard at first. I always tend to overpack, and that's, I think, one of the struggles for everyone is what to bring, right? Yep. So get out there and try an overnight and experiment with what you think you need and then reflect on that when, you get back home and what you might change. The other thing I might say is make sure to, as you get to longer trips, make sure you plan well. Know what's available out on your tour.
Okay.
Because that'll help lessen your load.
Yeah.
You don't have to carry quite so much if maybe you come across some laundry facilities, and so it minimizes the amount of clothes you have to carry or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. Or just looking ahead, if you should always have enough food and water to get you at least a couple segments away. Yep. So if you've looked ahead and you say, okay, there is a restaurant 15 miles ahead, well, maybe plan that restaurant will be closed. So you got to make it to the next stop, or certainly if you're in remote areas, you have to have water and some sort of snack of substance.
Yes, absolutely. And you brought up a good point there too about places being closed. So we always call when we plan our trips.
Oh, very smart.
If there's a place that we think we might stop, like that's a good rest stop on a day, like day 5 or something, we call them to make sure that the place isn't out of business or something.
Right.
Because you don't want to be surprised when you were counting on that place.
Right. Well, that brings me to the next question. Any do's or don'ts worth mentioning?
Sure, yeah. Well, the first thing is just don't wait too long to plan your trip.
Yeah.
Done that in the past, and it's it'll make it a bit more enjoyable if you plan enough.
Right.
You don't have to go overboard.
Right.
But
Right.
I wouldn't wait too long to pack either. I'm always a procrastinator.
Yeah.
And it usually bites me. It keeps happening, but I always want to
But at
be
least
able
you
to
think
plan.
about it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I'm getting ready for an 11-day tour, and tonight is actually, I have until about 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and I'm going to try really hard because, tonight's the last night, but
Yeah.
I'll be just exactly what you just said. It'll be tomorrow morning, and I'll be doing my frantic throw things that I probably don't need. So,
Right.
yeah.
I would say as far as a do, make sure you stop on your tour. Like, don't
Yeah, it's not
don't
a
waste
race.
it. Yeah. Gotta stop. We only, we go generally 10 miles or so and stop and enjoy the scenery.
Yep.
Find a town,
Yep.
talk to people.
Yep. Or even, what was it? I don't remember how many years ago there was actually a tornado in our area.
Yeah.
And we were in the middle of nowhere. All we had were not even farms, but farm fields. And even a state trooper kind of pulled up alongside us. He's like, "You guys need to find shelter. There's a tornado."
Right.
And we're like, I don't think a soybean field is really going to save us. But we ended up we found like a park that had a pavilion, and that ended up being our shelter. And we were okay. Like the tornado, unfortunately, did hit the town next to us, but we were fine. But wasn't it amazing how many people pulled into that park and asked if we were okay and if we needed any water? And we met some great people, and
It was, yeah.
God, it ended up being one of our most fun days.
It was, yeah. It was really neat talking to them, especially the firefighters.
Yeah. So, any adventures on your horizon?
Absolutely, yeah. So Ragbri is the most immediate one, which you'll
Yeah.
be on as well.
Yeah.
And then in September, the same group of guys that I did the Gap and CNO with, we're going to do the Natchez Trace
I'm
this year.
super jealous.
Right. So yeah, that's actually a road, kind of a lower speed limit road that runs from Natchez, Mississippi to Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, great.
And so we're not actually going to do the whole thing. We don't have quite enough time. We're going to start in Jackson
Okay.
and do that and ride north and then spend the weekend in Nashville.
And is it a lot of small towns as you go, or is it a little bit further remote?
Actually, it's a lot more remote than you'd think.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're still doing a lot of planning because it's going to be a tour unlike others that we've done. There
Sure.
are quite a bit, or there's a lot fewer resources available.
Oh, okay.
So it's really important that we plan this one out really well. There's some large gaps this time where there isn't really anything.
Mm-hmm.
And actually water is one of the biggest challenges on the
Ah.
Natchez Trace, just finding it, because there are a very limited number of actual public stops.
Okay.
And there aren't many places to get water. A lot of places you got to take like an exit because it's kind of like a highway.
Oh, okay. So then you're going off route into
Yeah.
town. And on a side note, water is super, super important, but keep in mind, it's heavy.
Right.
Water is heavy,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't not have it. So if it's between having a fan in your tent or carrying water, if you're at your max weight, skip the fan, take the water.
Right.
Although the fan's nice.
Yeah. it is.
Well, Will, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was really fun, and
Absolutely.
I look forward to seeing pictures of your Natchez Trace
Mhm.
and Ragbri, of course, but I'll probably see you on Ragbri.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. How about a touring tip? Let's talk resealable clear plastic bags. These guys are my friend. I use Ziploc brand bags, but of course any brand will do as long as they have a good seal on them. They come in all different sizes, they weigh almost nothing, and they can be tucked into any nook in your bag. So, and they're, in the long run, they're not super expensive. You may be paying a few bucks on the front side, but you can reuse them over and over and over again until that seal breaks or until you get a hole in them. And then the nice thing about it is you can just put them in the recycle bin, get another plastic bag. You're not out a whole lot of money. So besides replacing bags that get overused, I like to have a handful of empty bags on hand for various reasons. It's so frustrating when I open up my pannier and there's loose stuff everywhere. You know, if you're going to have to take stuff out to figure out whatever it is that you're looking for is, You're going to either have to put them on the ground or balance them on your saddle or on another bag. That just drives me crazy, especially if it's raining or you're in a hurry. So I try to contain everything in those bags. And I try to keep everything organized. So I put all my clothes together, all my gear together, all my cords together. Also, like the snack size resealable bags, awesome for snacks, of course, loose change that you collect along your tour. If you don't donate back to the restaurant or to the gas station, they end up in your jersey pocket or they're somewhere. So find a snack size bag, or any sort of Ziploc bag that you can start putting all your change in. Toiletries, whether you have a roll of toilet paper or for females, tampons, those sorts of things fit perfectly in a Ziploc bag. Keeps them from everything flying around. And then, of course, souvenirs. If you're a rock collector or shell collector, instead of having it at the bottom of your bike bag, just throw it into one of these bags. The sandwich size resealable bags, snacks, of course, great for protecting your cell phone. So I always have one in the little compartment that I keep my phone in. So if it starts sprinkling, you can pull over very quickly, put your phone into that Ziploc bag, and keep on rolling. Also protects your phone from sweat, because you can usually work through your phone through the plastic. The gallon size resealable bags, great for complete outfits, easy to grab when you're heading to the shower. You can just grab an entire outfit's already in the bag. Your toiletries for what you're going to use in the shower. Also great for the stinky stuff. So whatever you wore yesterday isn't stinking up your bag. It's in a Ziploc or plastic bag that's sealed. I keep saying Ziploc because that's what I use. Of course, you don't have to, but my last tip for you is do not skimp on the quality of your resealable bags, because I'm telling you, if you're getting the super cheap bags, the thin ones, the first time it tears, you're going to be mad at yourself. You're going to have to throw it away. So you're probably spending just as much time and money getting new bags out instead of just being able to reuse the same one. So there's my touring tip. Well, listeners, that's it for this week's Murphology Podcast. Check out murphologypodcast.com and email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com. I appreciate all of you, and thanks for taking the time to tune in and listen to the Murphology Podcast. I'll leave you with this quote from the Unwritten Book of Murphology. This quote comes from John Kabat-Zinn. "The best way to capture moments is to pay attention. This is how we cultivate mindfulness. Think about it."